One question I get all the time is how exactly did I go from charging 75 bucks per session and losing money on every client to making over $3 million dollars as a portrait photographer while raising 3 kids as a busy mom? In this video, I'm going to share the one mindset and the 3 strategies that took me from working harder than ever for almost no profit to building a multi-6-figure photography business that gave me both money and time with my family. I'm making this video because I know how hard it is to believe you can have both a successful business and be the mom you want when you're struggling to make your photography business profitable. And I'll show you the actual revenue numbers year by year. To be clear, the $3 million was purely from selling portrait photography sessions and prints to families, not from selling courses or coaching programs. Let me start at the very beginning with what shaped my mindset and gave me the courage to take this leap. First off, I was the kid of an entrepreneur, and I think that gave me an advantage. My dad taught auto tech at a local community college and then went from fixing cars in the summers in a rented bay at a gas station to building his sort of dream 17-bay auto service facility. I saw him work really hard. We sat down for dinner every single night as a family, and my parents were able to come to almost every single sporting event I played, even in college when I was playing all over the country. And back then, nobody else's parents had the time off to do that. And listen, while we weren't wealthy by any means, we never lacked for anything. And more importantly, what meant so much to me as a child is that my parents could be at everything. And actually, when I was thinking about it, both grandparents were entrepreneurs, great grandparents and great grandparents. So I do think that gives me an edge, if nothing other than in the mindset world, right? Which I get that others don't have, but that's all the more reason that if you don't come from that, you've got to have a system and you've got to have a mentor, someone who has been in the place that you want to go. I've spent years improving my system, and it's used by student after student after student with tremendous success. Even with that background, even with my MBA and working for years as a marketing director at a top, sort of small area advertising agency, I still started my photography business with no clue what the heck to do. I was charging, get this, $75 per session and giving away 36 gorgeous hand-printed proofs. So back in this time, photographers couldn't show images on a screen unless they scanned them, which I did for a small period of time. But we had to print proof so clients could see what they were going to order. And I was giving all of these away, hoping people would purchase more. Here's the problem. I was paying $65 for the film, the processing, and the printing, and people weren't ordering anymore. I was literally losing money on every single client. And I really think inside, I didn't expect it to work. I left a good salary and a good career at the advertising agency, and I wanted to make at least that much, but I could feel myself going backwards because I felt like such a fraud. I didn't have any photography education. Then came the breaking point moment, and I remember it vividly. I was sitting at my first little studio. Yes, I got a studio when I was not making money. Don't judge me. But my desk faced the outside window, and I was looking through the bars on the windows. I was in a very low rent district, and I just finished paying bills, and I was feeling so good that I was a good business owner, right? I had money to pay all the bills. Right then, a client called to reschedule, so I remember this day so clearly. I hopped in my car and the sun was shining, and I thought, I'm going to run home for this next hour and hug on my 6-month-old twins. So I got there and they smelled so good, and I scooped them up and I put them both in the rocker with me, and then I laid them, where I could see their faces, and their big eyes were looking at me. And I realized that while I had money to pay the bills, there was no money left for me. No benefits, no vacation, no new clothes. Our checking account balance was circling the drain. And I pictured my kids in that moment going to college. And I said to myself, I am not working the next 18 years of their lives away. By the way, here's the picture 18 years later of my 3 kids hugging as these 2 went off to college. It almost makes me cry just to look at it. I have it in my office to remember why I did what I did all those years ago, and the hard decisions I made was for these 3 and was for that moment in time. It's like I could see that picture way before it happened. But in that moment, it also occurred to me that I was paying for childcare. I could see her sitting right there to photograph other people's kids, and I was barely making enough to pay my own childcare. As a mom, this just felt completely backwards. So I made the decision that changed everything. I wasn't willing to settle for not having money just to have that flexibility and freedom. I wanted both. And I hope you're here because you want both too. I figured I would create profitable prices and nobody would come to me, and then I would have to figure out a new career path. But I was either going to figure it out or I was going to do something else. And that one decision would prove to be everything. But first, I had to learn a hard lesson about what actually makes money in this business of photography. This is a lesson I learned, and I'm hoping you can learn it through me, that saved me years of struggle. I was pregnant with my 3rd baby, so my mama didn't want me flying to photography conventions around the world. So I found a photographer that I'd seen up on this stage at the national convention, and he was, we call it like convention famous, right? He was highly acclaimed, celebrated, won all the awards, and he was drivable from me. So I called him up and I asked him if I could study with him. He quoted me $3,000 for a day and a half. I wasn't even making that kind of money. Do the math on how many sessions that was. And I didn't have that money, but I was like, I can't not do this. So I figured it out, bundled up, I drove up there, and we started with lighting. And that's so fun, right? He's showing me how he molds the gorgeous light and all the things. And we had lunch. And then I said, okay, tell me how to make money. And he goes, oh, I don't know that part. He said, I have a part-time job to pay my bills. I realized right then that I could spend years trying to become a top photographer, and that still didn't mean that I was going to make money. So right then I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on the business side, and I'm going to serve my clients as I work on my photography skills. I can do them at the same time. I was starving for a full system back then, and the internet was a baby, right? It had barely even started. So you couldn't really even Google. I don't even know if Google was a thing, but I wanted to find a system, but I had to go out there and study with all these different people to try to create my own system. And I think that's why I'm so dang passionate about the work we do at the Photography Business Institute, because I've spent 27 years learning and improving my system over and over. Through 9/11, through the housing crash in 2008, through a global pandemic. But knowing I needed business skills and actually implementing them were 2 different things. So the next strategy was what actually started bringing money in. This is where my ad agency background became my secret weapon. From years of working at this ad agency, I spent every day teaching my clients to raise their value with their marketing so they could build a brand that was worth more. In my mind, I was so used to working with clients at that high end of the market, and I had seen how they had better clients. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to be a Walmart and work the low end of the market. That just didn't seem fun to me. So I had to figure it out. And that's when I made the change that transformed everything. Remember how I told you I was giving away 36 gorgeous hand-printed black and white proofs for $75? Well, once I made the decision to stop that, everything changed. I completely flipped my model. What I had now decided was that the session fee was only covering my time to create the images. There was nothing else included in the session fee. And then this was right before digital. I scanned the negatives and I would project them or show them on my computer screen. My smallest piece of art that I was giving away now was around $500, and clients didn't get anything unless they ordered it and paid for it. So I went from $75 giving it all away to now my products being way more expensive and my least expensive product being about $500. Looking back, I have no idea how I had the confidence to do that, but I just held those yummy babies. And I just decided I'm either going to do it or I'm going to do something else. This is where it got tricky because I had to be okay letting go of some of my unprofitable clients. Right? They're the ones who loved me, who helped me get my start, and that thought just killed me. But after a few of the phone conversations of just being honest with them, I figured out how to identify who was going to stay with me and invest in wall portraiture, and then who wasn't going to go on with me. And I also was able to give love to those who weren't going to go on so that nobody felt bad and I didn't have to hide from them if I saw them in public. So once I tackled that, I had no fear because I thought, okay, as long as people aren't mad at me or talking badly about me, I'm fine. But changing my pricing was just part of it. The next strategy was what made it all sustainable as a mama. This is what allowed me to scale while being present for my family. I knew I could always make more money, but I couldn't make more time. Time is the most precious resource to me, and it should be to you too. So I started creating systems for everything I did. I would write it out. I would test it. If it would go wrong, I would say, what am I missing here? I would add a step. I would redo it till it would work, and then something else would break. And I would just keep refining that process until it worked. And I'd go to the next step of the process. I have 5 steps of my process now that are all well oiled. Now, this is what really drove me too. We know our kids don't always listen to us, but they do always watch us. And I wanted to be a super hands-on parent. I wanted my kids to see that they could do everything because how could I say, kids, go for your dreams? And then I'm stuck in a job that I hate, working all the time. Right now, my twins are 24 and my little baby is 22, and they are all 3 self-employed. How cool is that? My girls went full time with their photography businesses this summer in the same month. And my son is in virtual sales as a contractor, so he makes his own schedule in life. I do think they see the world differently than their friends because none of them were craving a normal job. They have tasted freedom because they were raised with it. They saw it and they want that. So I just want to be clear. I wanted money, but also more than that, I wanted the freedom to be a great mom and put my family first. Let me show you how I use this system that I've improved over the years to get to $3 million. Here are actual numbers. I started at around $5,000 to $6,000 in 1998, which was my first year. But look at this growth. 9 out of my first 10 years, I increased by more than 20%. Then for many, many years after that, as I started what's now the Photography Business Institute, I continued to steadily make 6 figures in my portrait business, which is how I've made way over $3 million in portrait photography. But how did this happen? It all came down to using a system. So listen, I took possession of my first itty bitty studio in the spring of 2001. It was like 500 square feet, no bathroom, a very small dressing room with no closet, and of course, bars on the window. So I spent this summer cleaning it up, painting, planting flowers out front, and I planned my grand opening at the end of August. So at the beginning of August, I went to my first national convention because it was only up in Chicago, which is about 3 to 4 hours from me. And I learned that I was doing everything wrong. I came back 2 weeks before my grand opening and I quadrupled my prices. I eliminated those free proofs. I bought a projector and a scanner to be able to show the images large during client presentations. And then I invited everyone I knew to my grand opening on August 30th, 2001. Then we know what happened 2 weeks later, don't we? 9/11. I'm sharing this because I want you to know that I built my business in one of the toughest economies. And I truly believe this is the best time you can start a business because if you can succeed in a crummy economy, my gosh, where are you going to go from there? It can only get easier. So here's the proof that the system worked. One of my first clients was named Julie, and I still hadn't smoothed out my system. I was still scared to sell. I tried to unsell her and sabotage the sale because I didn't think this newly newly married stay-at-home mom should be buying as much as she was wanting to. I also knew we were struggling to pay bills, and I assumed everyone was. I have since learned not to sell out of my own wallet, but after all was said and done, Julie's order was $1,800. I did the math. That replaced 24 sessions. That's all it took for me. I never looked back. I doubled down on what I call the photographer profit path model that I was creating a system for, and my sales averages were increasing every single year without being pushy or salesy or yucky or annoying. So what does that mean for you? I want you to know that it isn't about your photography skills or your financial position or the support at home that you have or don't have, or having a degree, or the size of your town, or your age, or your color, or your attractiveness. It's a decision that you can make to find someone who's doing what you want and now has a proven system, and go learn from that person. It may mean short-term sacrifice, like getting a part-time job to fund the education or trading for childcare. It's not about resources, my friend. Tony Robbins always says that it's about being resourceful. I had one student who wanted this education so badly that she went door to door asking neighbors to scoop doggy poo-poo so she could do it. And she's now making over 6 figures. Listen, if it were as easy as giving a ton of digital files for $200 and doing mini sessions, everyone would be doing it. Oh, wait, they are, which is why it doesn't work anymore. My friend, the better way is out there. You've got to learn it. Because remember, you didn't start a photography business to work harder and make less than a traditional job. You started it for a better life and more freedom. By the way, if you want to learn more about this system that's generated more than $32 million in sales for my students in the last 6 years, click the link in the description so you can see how we can connect. And keep going.